And guys, we are going to have right now very, very interesting and just it's my pleasure really to have the opportunity to introduce Dan and Tim Vlamis from Vlamis Software. I don't think that these guys honestly need any introduction. They are more than well known in the Oracle Analytics world. They both Oracle Ace directors. Dan has been a founder of this analytics and data Oracle user community. And it's a pleasure for me to introduce them to have this great session of strategies and layouts for data visualization success. Dan, Tim, the audience is all yours.
Thanks, Adel. I'll let Tim share his screen, and we're going to talk about especially strategies and layouts for data visualization. So talking about that and talking about how you can lay out your dashboard and how you can set up your data visualization projects for success. Tim, if you go to the next slide, we're going to tag team on this. Tim and I often present as kind of a brother-brother tag team. Just so you know a little bit about the company, we were founded 30 years ago. We have all sorts of clients, and this area of analytics and data and machine learning is what we especially do. You'll find that Tim and I are especially passionate about these topics because that's what we do. You'll find more information about us at Vlamis.com. We're also authors of the book on data visualization for Oracle Business Intelligence. So something Tim and I talk a lot about and are very passionate about. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Tim. So there it is, data visualization for Oracle Business Intelligence. I come from in this more of an IT background, and I'm an Oracle Ace director, as is Tim, and have more of the computer science area, that type of thing, and started the company. Tim, I'll let you introduce yourself and kind of take it away, and I'll add, if you will, color commentary while you do the play-by-play of the presentation.
Yeah, so I'm more the business guy. If Dan's a computer science degree guy, I'm the guy with the economics degree and more of a business school kind of business analyst background. So what we want to do today is really talk about thinking about how to present that. So a lot of times in this work, we get very, very focused on the data. And what we have is a quote from Sherlock Holmes, from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Crime is common, logic is rare, therefore it is upon the logic rather than upon the crime that you should dwell. And so what we're encouraging everybody to do is to stop thinking about the numbers and thinking about the logic and why you're showing what you're showing. And so our simple advice is to think of this not as the numbers, but think of it as evidence. Evidence that supports decisions between options, right? Choices. So that's really what we want to do. And what we find when we start working with companies, a lot of times we get tons of pivot tables. And they literally say, I just want my numbers. In fact, we had one guy tell us that when I see a spreadsheet, some people see numbers, I hear Beethoven. That was literally what he told us. And it's kind of like, okay, maybe you do. I don't know how many other people in your organization do. And so we have some questions. What was the highest monthly sales for a company? If you guys could just answer in the chat, which one of these companies over here, GenMind, StockPlus, or TestCare, had the highest monthly sales. And then once you've found that, just answer which month had the largest drop in sales for a company. So just find that largest drop during a month for one of these companies, GenMind, StockPlus, or TestCare. And then if you've done that, find in which month did TestCare have a greater gain than StockPlus. See if you can figure that out. And is there a seasonal pattern to the sales for all companies? And I think these are what we want to remember is numbers are just numbers in isolation. They are not answers to business questions. And these are very simple, straightforward business questions that can be answered easily with visualizations. It's why we stress so much to have a solid strategy for doing visualizations and having a strong layout. And so here, what we can see is that, what was the highest monthly sales for a company? All we need is to graph the monthly sales by company, by month, and we can immediately see what's the longest bar. We can graph which had the difference, so that when we say which month had the largest drop in sales, we can just simply find which of these bars is descending is the longest. And we can see immediately it was Stock Plus in November. And then, of course, in which month did Test Care have a greater gain than Stock Plus? We're really looking for in which one of these months is the gold bar longer than the green bar. And it turns out, it's in May. So, and of course, seasonal pattern, we're going to use a line graph so that we can see easily, yes, there is a seasonal pattern, low in the winter, high in the summer, spring. So that answers that question for us simply by using a combination of graphs that show different insights in different views. And what you'll see is that we emphasize it's okay to repeat the data in several different views. So it's kind of like the apocryphal story of, the blind men looking at the elephant, and one of them saying that, the elephant is long and thick like a rope, and well, that guy's looking at the tail. And somebody else is saying it's like a wall, and that guy is looking at the side of the elephant, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we're suggesting is, rather than continually showing different data and trying to cram too much into a dashboard, organize it and feel free to repeat the data, but with different emphasis. We want to talk about layouts and kind of layout strategy. We have 4 that we're going to review today. And Dan, it may be easier just to do this in demo instead of PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, Tim. Also, I was going to add that when you were showing all those examples of the graphs while you switch, people often ask how do you set up one bar graph that kind of answers all the questions?
Everything.
And the answer is, you kind of can't. The visualizations feature various questions that you're trying to answer. You can often answer 2 questions, but not necessarily 3 or 4 in one visualization.
Yeah, exactly. And what we, the idea of just doing very, very dense graphs that show everything in one graph often leads to different people finding different insights, and that just leads to kind of confusion and a lot of grind in the organization. So what we want to promote is everybody getting the same insight rather than different insights. So generally speaking, we want one idea per graph that is a dominant idea. The other thing that we strongly believe in is having a topic. And so all of our layouts are built around the idea of what is the topic. So the topic here is EBITDA for this company, for Acme Corp, in May of 2015. This says what everything else in the dashboard is about. And by putting it in the most prominent position, which is the upper left-hand corner, this starts to organize and give us a strategy for what information and what insight do we put where. So for example, we support this EBITDA with 3 important other measures: net profit, gross contribution, and the total sales, so that we have context for this major EBITDA number. Now, if we want to show EBITDA over time, we're going to use a line graph. We're going to use some of the cool features that Adel showed us last time. So we're actually going to use a trend with it. And we're going to show the overall trend across the year for EBITDA, so we get that picture for the context for the EBITDA for May. Now, we're going to break it out the most important way we're doing it. We're choosing kind of the center upper most visually prominent position on the dashboard by breaking it out by company so that we get GenMind, StockPlus, and TestCare. So we have those discrete values, and then immediately underneath it, we're showing how is that different from last month. So are they up or are they down? So you can see quickly that GenMind had the lowest EBITDA contribution, but it had the biggest difference. So it had the biggest increase from the previous period. And then, of course, TestCare had a really nice value, but it was down from the previous month. So this enables people to, at a glance, see what's happening in the organization. Now we then have EBITDA by org. So we take these and we break them out and show those values. So again, we have a different view. The more detailed information.
I'm going to point out real quick also, when we do by organization, we're purposefully putting that down as a horizontal bar chart because it gives us more room to put the label. And when you're handling more values, it's better as often a vertically oriented horizontal bar chart. And so the decision of how to lay out the screen and how to lay out the visualization is purposeful based on the data, the number of values you're showing, the importance, as Tim was talking about, by company. That's why it's in the center. Organization is less important, so it's over on the right side. Keep going.
Thanks, Stan. Yeah. And also, again, we put our difference graph of this organization breakout directly underneath it so that we can say, okay, here's a total discrete values. What's the difference? How is it compared to last month? Again, these kinds of insights greatly facilitate understanding what's happening now and why do I care about it. Likewise, the EBITDA difference for the rolling 12 months, we can see what is the overall pattern, whether they're up or they're down. We can see across geographies, where are we up, where are we down, where are the big EBITDA contributions, where are the lower contributions. And so we start to get this kind of multidimensional, richer view, but we put it further down the page. Why? Because we want people to see the summary and then go for the detail. We can either do that on a scrolling basis or on a drilling navigation basis. A lot of times what we try to do is give an overall summary by page and then drill to a specific topic. So a lot of times what we would do if we had a breakout for an individual company, we would have an individual company page, et cetera, that kind of thing. All right. And so here we're kind of doing our slices. We can see the EBITDA by organization and by company so that we can look at those together and compare them and see how they compare with the others through brushing and whatnot. Sankey graph gives the relationship of showing who's up, who's down, and who's associated with whom. So again, repeat the same data in different ways. So same little pivot graph, pivot chart, pivot table that's supported by several different views. All right.
We also put that, while he goes to the next canvas, we put that table down at the bottom. We believe in general that the graphic presentation of the data is more effective for people to be able to discern, but often people want to see their numbers. So we put that at the bottom so people can scroll to get it.
That is the general strategy, is to put tables at the bottom of the page. One of the other layouts that we use a fair amount is what we call a KPI layout. And so what we're doing here is we are choosing our KPIs in order of importance and then giving context about them on either side. So you can see we have Stock Plus. This is looking at individual companies so that we can see revenue, net profit, EBITDA. We can see the difference according to how to, and what we're doing here is we're interpreting the slope of this line so that when it's headed down, we have a descending bar over here. When it's headed up, we have an ascending bar. And so, and that gives us the ability to understand the relative amount of change in, whereas the line graph gives us, you know, the overall trend. So interpreting slope is tough, but actually seeing the difference as a bar is easy. So it's a relatively simple presentation on a single page of 3 KPIs, revenue, net profit, and EBITDA, but focused on information over time and how to interpret it. Again, we've turned on the filter. So if you want to look at test care, you can simply click on test care. Notice that the color of the line graph changes with the color of the bar. So again, what we're doing is we're trying to tie the design together so that it's easier for people to interpret and follow what they're looking at. Again, if we choose the purple GenMind, we get a purple line. So in many of our layouts, and one of the strategies for graphs is to think carefully about what color choices are we going to use, and then tie it together so that we're reinforcing the use of those colors so that people learn and at a glance can tell and understand what they're looking at without constantly cluttering the page with all kinds of labels and whatnot.
I also point out that this idea of, you know, thinking through the dashboard, thinking through carefully what colors you use is kind of related to how important is this dashboard. We're presuming that in this case, this is a company dashboard that lots of people are going to look at, and it has a importance that demands this type of thought. If it's something that's just used by a couple people in a single department, you may not care about it and may not spend as much time actually designing the dashboard. We do not think that all dashboard pages or all canvases are equivalent importance.
Right. No, it's exactly right. And it's also true that we spend a lot of time tweaking really important pages, and we invest in making it stronger, if you will, and more usable. I'll also point out that these 3 colors are balanced so that we're not accidentally or artificially emphasizing one over the other, so that the purple has roughly the same amount of visual weight as the green, as does the gold. So this way, when we're choosing categorical colors that reflect categorical values, we're not accidentally putting a really dark color or a really bright color that calls attention to it and kind of implies something that isn't there or that we don't want in the dashboard. One of the other layouts we'll do a lot of times is, particularly as we kind of, and this is an example of something where we're going to drill in, where we would navigate to it logically from one of the other views is, and we want to show this, okay, for these different organizations, for the EBITDA rolling 12 months versus a previous period, when are we up the biggest? When are we down the biggest? It gets across time, you know, this kind of dimensional view we'll want to see on a more detailed basis. So we'll use this kind of multidimensional view. We don't always put that in the summary just because it takes more effort to look at. But if we want to highlight this, obviously when we say, oh, production is this one, what is the pattern here? We can see it's a very, very small bar here. It's a bigger bar. And then of course we can see the across time. And then what we're also doing is we're saying, okay, EBITDA and EBITDA difference, how is that valued for this given month. We can see it across time, but for the month, we see that it is highest in our scatter plot, and that becomes important as an insight. So we'll use these combination of graphs more for discovery, more for looking through things, and you can choose different combinations and whatnot. And that is one of the things that we also emphasize when we train with people. You know, how do we show them how to navigate through these linked visualizations so they can get the insights. This is also an example of where we're looking at kind of personnel differences. And we want to look at what is the discrete variance in the head count, is it up or down for all these different offices across time. You can see when we're hiring, when we're gaining people, when we're losing people. And here is the overall head count. So you can see compared the offices one to the other as you read down this graph, how many people do they have? A lot of data, relatively dense, much easier to consume visually than in pivot tables. So this also kind of, you know, will show those differences and call them out pretty quickly. And that way you can see which is, when do we hire the most people? You're not looking at, oh, what was the jump in the intensity of the color in this graph? It's a little bit harder to pick out because it's, you know, valued across this entire range. Yeah.
This could in effect be like a pivot table, except we're we're choosing the color based on the value in the pivot table, but you can fit much more. And by hiding the numbers, it's always available if you hover over the number, over the cell. But by doing that, you focus on the pattern of the darkness of the color rather than the specific value. If you need it for lookup purposes, use the table. If you're trying to analyze it, use colors, use a graphical presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dan, I think what I'm going to do is move back to the slides, and then we'll come back to a little bit more of some of this layout strategy for the multidimensional stuff that's a little more involved.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Let me pop this back up. So this is where we start most often. when we are starting with a new data set, or oftentimes even with a new layout with a new client, we'll in essence identify what is the factor, what is the topic, and we'll put it up here in the upper left, and then we'll work out dimensionally around it in order of priority, dimension 1, 2, and 3, so that we can start to build this rich view of the topic. We'll start with evaluating a factor dimension. You know, then sometimes, you know, fact is this, like an example of sales analysis, or we may be doing a customer or product analysis, in which case then we need to choose, you know, what is the key insight that we want to talk about, or are we just going to name the company or whatever it is as an attribute. In terms of kind of data discovery, you want to find the lowest grain. You know, this is straight out of Kimball, I think, Dan, where you want to make sure the grain is consistent for your analysis, and then you're looking for the distribution of the data across that grain, and you're looking, you know, you're thinking, is it an event or a transaction, to kind of find your fact table, if you will, and build your star. And then for, you know, you're looking for these kind of shaped curves in a log normal or normal, kind of a bell shape on your distributions. So here's an example of this, you know, summary 4-quadrant layout where we have Total sales is our topic, and then we're breaking it down 3 different ways. It's broken down by product, customer, and time. I know these labels are a little bit small for you guys to read, but in essence, what we're doing is we're trying to give insight about sales. And then we build these out, and then we build the interactions and the drill paths for more detailed views, more multidimensional views, cross-sectional views, that kind of thing.
One of the things I'll also point out is people
Yeah.
tend to put these dashboards together to answer all sorts of questions. This is more of a purposeful way of thinking about it. What are the
That's
questions you're trying to do with the layout? Often people end up, in effect, replicating an ad hoc tool in a dashboard tool. We believe more in designing the dashboard for the questions that most people ask. And if they want an ad hoc tool, there's actually a very nice ad hoc interface, the data visualization interface, and drag over what you want, that type of thing, rather than trying to replicate a query tool as a dashboard.
Well, this get right, exactly. And this also gives us a strategy for where to start.
Yeah.
So this tells us we can immediately build 4 pages for a client, given an initial, very quick summary, kind of discovery session. So what we'll do is we'll find out what's the most important topic, what are the dimensions, and then we'll build out a page for each dimension. Then we have these 4 pages that we can show them, and they can respond to something other than trying to describe what they have in their mind, which a lot of times, and with these complex data sets, it's hard to get people to organize their thoughts. So this gives us something to show them that we can build, and then we can go from there. So we looked at the summary KPI layout. We talked about that. Here's a different example of how we go down the page and use, this is actually for a manufacturing client, Dan. So this was dollars to inventory by plant, and then showing that across time, the budget efficiency. So if you're doing OEE types of things, the overall equipment effectiveness, which is kind of one of the key KPIs in manufacturing, this gives us the ability to kind of break that out and show these KPIs and have a strategy for showing them so that we're not, trying to figure it out from whole cloth every time. We simply follow our own basic layouts, and they're pretty powerful. So they're meant to be read across. We place these views in alignment with the KPI measures, and we organize the KPIs in a prominent column. When they have 28 KPIs, we suggest politely that some of them are more important than others, and there's likely a hierarchical arrangement to them. And that what we want to do is figure out what's the strategy for looking at certain KPIs together. And so we'll kind of guide them, and we have a sense of this. We've done it a lot of times, but I would encourage everyone to be a little bit more, think of yourself as a guide, think of yourself as a chef who's creating the dinner, rather than just letting somebody tell you what they like to eat. And they may go from, a steak to banana pudding without realizing they don't mean on the same dish, We should probably head back to the demo, Dan.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. While Tim's transitioning, one of the things that we do is we'll share the slides in the slide deck so you can see some of this. So we include some of the screen captures because that doesn't work as well, when people want to see the slides. You'll have the video if you want to look at that in terms of the presentation, but that way you all have at least you can recall what we were showing.
So when we have these multidimensional views, a lot of times we want to think carefully about what are the relationships between the data elements and the dimensions. And so here we're looking at, this is fundamentally what's selling where and how are those products organized. So we'll break the world down into the three areas of the APAC or the Asia Pacific, EMEA, and Americas. And then we'll look at the flow and the relative, again, graphing the difference in percentage is much, much easier to show what's up and what's down than graphing discrete numbers and asking people to interpret it. And so that also, Dan, this is one of the key things that we would encourage everyone to think carefully about when you're actually graphing data, is just don't take the raw data and graph it. Rather, look for the insight. What's the insight? Are we interested in the difference from a year ago? Are we interested in the difference from last month or last period? Are we interested in the difference from the average? You know, so all of those may have relevance, but we want to show it and graph that difference rather than just the discrete amount.
I'll also point out that I think they added it about a year ago or so in the product, the ability to have tooltips on these. And when you hover over a given cell, for instance, you can control showing not only the difference that you're actually presenting, but you can add additional values. So if this is changed from year ago, you could also show the discrete value in here as a tooltip when you hover over, if that's something people want to look up.
Yeah, and notice we have this sorted from top to bottom. So this is, you know, this is the big hitters at the top, 250,000, and then you know, the kind of the small ones, the difference being these weak ones down here in terms of revenue. And then what we're doing is we're looking at the year ago sales difference. So this is why it takes a little more effort to dive in and understand these kind of views, but we can, you know, we can quickly find something on the Sankey graph and, you know, identify it and then find out, okay, where is it and where can I get my discrete values on the pivot heat map. Okay, and so that's how these are meant to be used together, is to do kind of your, you know, formulate your questions, looking at relationships, and then finding discrete values and look it up and see it within a context on the table. So that's why
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Click on the big red one, the red block, to show where that's coming from. On there, and you can see where that's coming from.
Is you can say, oh, this is way down in the install product in the Americas, and then you can trace it back to, oh, it's part of services, you know, this kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yep, you can go both ways. Thanks, Dan. So we use these combinations a lot. There isn't just one layout. Sometimes we'll use a combination of scatter plots and a combination of pivot heat maps. So, and we'll use trellising so that we can get to the details on a single page and show a lot of depth with this kind of approach. So again, this is looking at that same year ago sales difference, but now we're breaking it out by company, by region, by product, who's up, who's down, and we can start to visually interrogate this and get a sense of it. Here it is on an aggregate basis. Here it is on a broken out by company basis. And then if we want to look at it by products on just a, you know, what is, you know, is it, how is this product doing in terms of sales and the difference, and also we get a sense of the profit margin, we can immediately find out where is that coming from. And you can see on this guy, it's further down, but it's kind of a small dot where it's pretty prominent here. So in essence, what you get by studying these different combinations you different points will jump out. So here's a very small, we're doing really well with this in terms of the year ago sales difference. It's a very bright green, 236,000, but on overall contribution, it's not that high. But here in this graph, in this scatter, it's way at the top. Okay.
That's interesting. Tim,
Yeah.
we do have one question I want to point out to people. We'll run out of time here, but one question that came in, and if people have other questions, put them in the Q&A and we can handle them after when the next session is started. But one of them is, for the KPI layout, am I able to nest KPIs under those that they impact in order to reduce clutter on my prominent column? How would this work or look like? How would you handle being able to have nested KPIs with this capability, Tim?
So it's an interesting question. And I would suggest that you need some kind of structure that reflects that it's nested. So immediately what I would start to think about is a larger KPI on the left, and then smaller KPIs that are related, that are subsets of that to the right or up and down. So that maybe you have, you know, if I can go back to that KPI layout.
Yeah, I'm thinking also we had the master sales, then the three that make up that as part of that. And we ended up showing them in performance tiles in that case. Now you also have to think, are you looking at those KPIs across time or whatever?
You could nest three other measures underneath this that go, you know, that's traditionally how that's like how an OEE works, is you would have the overall equipment effectiveness KPI is a bigger number than underneath it, the three numbers or four numbers that are multiplied together to achieve it.
Right.
So more like this layout where we have an EBITDA with three kind of contextual EBITDAs underneath. I lost my labels on this view, but
gets the point across.
It's the point across as to how you do it. Yeah.
So then you could do that, or you could do it visually with graphs and such. Okay. So, all right. And at this point, anything else from the slides you wanted to go through, Tim?
Yeah, let me just put those up real quick. And Dan, quick check on time. Where are we?
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes left. So
2 minutes.
I'd say, yeah, wrap up. Sorry, the time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. So let me do this. We'll just go to questions and answers.
I'll also point out, while Tim's doing that, we'll provide the entire slide deck. And we talk about this type of stuff in various venues. So you know, follow us on Twitter or reach out to us via LinkedIn or email. Love to tell you more about this. And we have similar sessions. We could go on for hours on this stuff. This is what we do for the companies, our clients that we work with. Go ahead.
These are the questions you're going to want to ask. Who's the audience? What's the subject of the topic? I know we're kind of hammering over. What's the major insight? Give that the most visual weight and the best prominent position. That's really going to guide your layout decisions the most. And, you know, think about context and comparisons. Okay. And I would like to, you know, just thank everyone for the opportunity to talk with you guys. And we're interested in talking with you afterwards too. So just drop us a line.
So, okay.
And I'll put up our.
Okay. Yeah. Put that up, and we'll happy to answer any of the questions that people have on this, but probably need to move on at this point to other topics.
I don't see our email. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, put that
Here
up.
we are. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Excellent.